Shabbat Shalom. As I stand before you on this Shabbat during this month of June, as many of you, I hope, read my scroll article from last month, you'll know part of the reason I stand before the community because, and wanted to make sure that we stopped on Shabbat to note this month of Pride, because you don't have to go far to find a story of someone left out, of someone who's dealt with discrimination, of someone that's actually been harmed because of their gender identity and because of their sexual orientation. It happens in too many places, far too often, whether it's schools, whether it's synagogues, whether it's our government, even just casual interactions. It is in little moments. And then we also know, as we're here in this month of June, we're celebrating yet another yahrzeit of the shooting, of the Pulse shooting the shooting at the Pulse nightclub. Stories about the raids that led to the Stonewall protests and the Stonewall riots in the 1960s. That was the impetus for celebrating this month of Pride. But tonight, I wanted to make an effort to do something to not sit in the brokenness and not talk about the brokenness, not because it's not real and not because it's present, but because in Judaism, sometimes we go for the nechemta. We go for that way that we can bring love and kindness and caring. I wanted to make sure that I stood on the bima tonight and really celebrated Pride. This past summer, we had an amazing family trip. Jill and I and the three kids, we all went to San Francisco. We went to Haight-Ashbury, and there we got to go to the LGBTQ museum that they have in that neighborhood. And as I messaged Anna earlier today, that this is why you take your dad to that museum. Because in that museum, they had the original Pride flag. They had the original flag that was put together for the first Pride in the late 1960s. It was put together by an artist, Harvey Milk, who you might know as the mayor of San Francisco, was murdered because of his sexual orientation in his office. He had suggested that they have a flag as they're doing an International Day of Pride in San Francisco, that they need something to show all of the different colors, all of the different communities, all the different parts of LGBTQ identity, and that was the birth of that rainbow flag. I share that with you. I want that image. Why is that rainbow flag so powerful, beautiful? Where does it come from? Because it symbolizes something more. It's not just lots of different colors, because there's lots of different ways of approaching sexual orientation, of identity, of gender. It's not just that, but think about a rainbow. A rainbow is incredible because a rainbow, you see all of those colors. You see the places where they blend. Color isn't discrete. But also, what is really a rainbow? It's just white light that has been divided, and then if you put it back, it all goes back to white light. It's all part of the same whole. Even if you see separate and discrete parts, what you're really seeing is something that's a greater whole. As we think about that image, that visual of a rainbow, I also want to acknowledge that this is Shabbat. That it's not just Pride, and it's not just LGBTQ, but it's Jewish and Jewish values. Take for a moment to think about the words of Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. How many times have you said those words? Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. I'm guessing you've heard that before. But there's also other translations. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel. Adonai is your God. Adonai is unique, different, singular, something different from anything else. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is your God. Adonai is unity, when everything becomes one. And those 2 points of unity and uniqueness are so vital to us as a people, but I also think they are values we need to hold dear in this month of Pride. And not just, silly for me even to start there. It's not just the month of Pride. It's to acknowledge it in this month so we do it all the time. Unity is so important to how we move through the world and take care of everybody. It is one of the central values of our Torah portion this week. In this month, in this Torah portion, in Parshat Naso, in the book of Numbers, you have one of the most boring readings in the entire Torah. And that's something that the rabbis don't want up on the bima telling you that. Do you know why? How many tribes of Israel are there? There are 12. There are 12 tribes of Israel. And in Parshat Naso, each tribe has a prince that is declared, and they roll up with their wagon, and they say, here's our offering. This many cows, this many donkeys, this many this many that, and they go through their entire list of what's in their wagon. And then the next one rolls up, and the next one, they go through all 12. Here's the challenge of it. They each give exactly the same thing. Every tribe gets to list out everything in their wagon, and yet each one is bringing the same thing. You could even, so here it is, it lists it, you could say it's boring, it's overly repetitious, but what do we know about Torah when it repeats itself? It's doing it for a reason. Because each tribe is bringing the same thing for an important reason. Because each tribe, each prince is unique and different, with their own strengths, with their own weaknesses, with their own journey. Even in the camp, everybody moves in a little bit of a different way. And yet, each and every one is a human being. Each and every tribe is the same. Each and one brings the same exact offering. Each of those offerings by each of those tribes is a unity of action and purpose. It's the whole community together. They're all in it. They're all unified. No one's going to try to compete. No one's going to say, you're less than me. We're all in it together. Unity is so much of a part of our community standing at Sinai. And yet, I also spoke about uniqueness. Wouldn't you know, in this Torah portion, in addition to the listing of the princes, you get an interesting guy. How many of you have heard of Nachshon? Nachshon ben Aminadav, he is a hero. He's a great guy. He shows up a little bit later in Shlachacha, but he also shows up in Midrash. In Midrash, at the story of the crossing of the Sea of Reeds, what do we have? We have Moses, and the story, you can't just say Mi chamocha, right? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh. Do you hear the cha and the ka? That's a little dot and a dagesh and a kaf. That's Nachshon. Moses is there standing on the seashore, and the Midrash says Moses was talking to God and lifting his staff and saying, God, make it open, let the seas part so we can go. The Egyptians are getting closer and closer. And Nachshon says, I don't care. I am not waiting for any of this. I'm going to freedom. And he goes in, ankles, knees, and toes, not in that order. Toes, knees, hips, shoulders, head. He's going in. He keeps saying, God, let it open because I'm going to freedom or else. And then that's when the waters part. That it was Nachshon that just dives in and goes for it. Could you imagine, as we talk about uniqueness in everybody, all the colors of the rainbow, could you imagine if Nachshon didn't come forward? If everybody said, no, we're all going to stand here Moses said, stand here. God said, stand here. We're all going to stand here. That's the way we do it. If Nachshon hadn't gone forward in his own uniqueness, in his own way, in his own style, to cross the Sea of Reeds. Could you imagine if Nachshon went forward and everybody around him said, that's Nachshon, or that's Nachshon, why would we follow him? Could you imagine? Think about the language we have heard where somebody says, you're different, I don't like you because you're different. Could you imagine if they did that to Nachshon? Could you imagine what would have happened if Nachshon had looked at the people behind him and he said, I like you, I don't like you, I don't understand you, and said, you guys, the cool ones, can come with me, and the rest of you can stay on the shore. Could you imagine if he didn't invite everybody along? Think about that for a moment. Both the uniqueness of Nachshon and the unity of the people in that moment. Think of all of those scenarios where in your life, because of someone's uniqueness, of their way of moving through the world, the whole people, the whole community, the whole family, the whole whatever it is, that tapestry of mixed multitude, think about what would have happened if people dismissed each other or didn't include each other. Think what would happen if we hadn't gotten out and been able to leave Egypt as an incredible, powerful, mixed multitude. Think about those moments where we've come together with our differences and unified in powerful ways to create something amazing. We say in this time of year that everybody stood at Mount Sinai. Well, I add to that, on this Shabbat, we all have to get out of our stuck and narrow places together. We all have to work together to get out of our Egypt. This is that Shabbat. It's a Shabbat, but it's a Shabbat that I teach that value, lay out that lesson, get you to think, and it's not you, it's me too. It's just part of our world to really think about the uniqueness of gender identity, about the meaning of sexual orientation, and how we include the people that might be different than us. It's one little identity. Somebody beautifully said it the other day. It is true that that is what I am, but that's only part of what I am, but it's meaningful and significant. Sometimes it's at the fore and sometimes it's not. It's one of many identities that creates rhythm and texture for how each of us means in our lives. And if we really want to live out Shema, sanctifying unity and sanctifying uniqueness, each person, each human being needs space to be who they are. In this month of Pride, with so much discrimination and senseless hatred, we need to be more aware of the work that we need to do, that needs to be done by all of us. We need to be conscious and caring and compassionate and full of grace and care for people, whatever their identity. Where we say, regardless of who you are, if somebody is queer, it's okay. Somebody's heterosexual, it's okay. If somebody talks about a husband or talks about a wife or a girlfriend or boyfriend, however people talk about themselves or however they present themselves, that's part of it too. I've been getting a lot of education from Anna and a lot of other folks around me. They've said some of it is making the space when someone talks about themselves to welcome, to include, to realize the power of that humanity, whether they're trans, whether they're non-binary, all of these different categories that we talk about, especially during this month. But also they might not share, and they just want to be included and accepted. And I say we, everybody. Everybody needs to be included and accepted. This is all about our openness to others being in relationships that fit who they are and freedom to share that part of their life and celebrate it. Shema Yisrael. As we march through our wilderness of our lives, as we arrive in our promised lands, isn't that an amazing part of our story? Sometimes we're at Sinai, and sometimes we're crossing the Jordan River. Let us listen to and for each other, sensing and appreciating the strengths and weaknesses in each human being, appreciating their uniqueness, and drawing them and being drawn in with each and every soul into a very powerful unity that works for shalom. Amen. Shabbat shalom.